Part 20. Global Copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 191. A counselor with full social fear attributes would naturally not be Luzaoki's opponent. In just a few sentences, he mastered the rhythm of the conversation. After understanding Linyujia's purpose, Luzaoki breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out that she was here to inform Luzaoki to participate in the pre-match training for the competition. He thought it was Wang Yanran who was causing trouble for him again. The weather has started to get cooler at the end of September. The leaves are gradually turning yellow, and the evergreen pines and cypresses stand tall in this autumn-filled campus. But the light green still can't stop the feeling of desolation. Just like Luzaoki standing at the entrance of the arena. He never expected that he would come on time, but none of the remaining teammates would show up. Even Director who was responsible for training them, was nowhere to be seen. A gust of autumn wind blew by, and a few dead leaves fell to the ground. The closed door of the arena looked even more desolate. There was a lonely sign outside the door, standing there as lonely as Luzaoki. It read, "The venue is under renovation and temporarily closed to the public. Luzaoki." Without too many words, he realized that he might have been played again. Either the time and place of the gathering were wrong, or the training was completely untrue. He gritted his teeth, but there was confusion in his eyes that he couldn't believe. This is the second time he has fallen into the hands of this counselor. It shouldn't be. No matter how you look at it, this counselor is not a very scheming person. Why is it that someone as smart as Luzaoki gets tricked so often? He thought about it and realized it immediately. This is probably because Linyujia is really easy to cheat. And Luzaoki is full of confidence in herself. It is estimated that this counselor still doesn't know that he has become someone's tool to tease Luzaoki and deliver false information. Hard garlic, Luzaoki angrily pouted at a certain woman named Wang, turned around and left. But before he took 2 steps, his phone suddenly rang. "Sorry, I'm late, everyone." At the entrance of the training ground, Luzaoki, who hurriedly arrived, awkwardly greeted the people present. "You may not believe it, but I was really on time this time. It's just that the location is wrong." "It's okay, I know. I accidentally lost my way on the road of life." "I understand." The person who spoke was a handsome young man. He laughed and joked with what Luzaoki had said before. Ever since Luzaoki became a little famous in school, his performance in school has basically been picked out, and this classic quote is no exception. Some languages are even regarded as wise sayings by some people, recorded in books, carried with them, and reviewed every day. For example, this sentence, "I have lost my way on the road of life," for example, "it all depends on the support of my peers." Another example is when he frowned and said when being pestered by a girl, "I advise you to stay away from me. Because if you get any closer, you'll melt. Stop peeking at me. Because if you look at me again, you'll explode." A series of classic words, etc., all demonstrate Luzaoki's distinctive personality. The most important thing is that if you say the sentence from others, it may just be a cup. But Luzaoki is different. With his strength, it is really possible to turn what he says into reality. On the horror of spells. So these few words not only allowed Luzaoki to successfully get rid of the entanglement, but also made everyone think that this person's words and deeds were really cool. Far more than what Luzaoki had seen at the Weiwan training ground before, he was dazzled by what he saw, ready to move, and wanted to go and play some games right away. Yes, like an assassin. Luzaoki smiled at him, and he nodded shyly to Luzaoki. He was about 1.8 meters tall, slightly taller than Luzaoki. He had a headband on his forehead and a close-fitting short shirt. His exposed arms were strong and bulging with muscles. The arena reflects the confrontation between students from both sides and is mainly a suitable place for competitions. The training ground is different from the arena. I believe everyone already knows the purpose of calling everyone here this time. What a coincidence. He was obviously the most reserved among the group. Director who brought everyone to the center of the venue and said with a smile. He was actually a handsome young man who had met Luzaoki before. With a quick glance, Luzaoki took in all the movements and expressions of the 5 people on the scene. There were 2 people left, one was a middle-aged man with a serious face. Needless to say, Luzaoki could guess that he was Director who was in charge of their training. Luzaoki guessed that it was either pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger, or it was related to his own ability. You know, in this Adventurer Academy, the general physique of the students is extraordinary level, even if you want to be short-sighted, it is a bit difficult. And this girl wears glasses. Even when he was standing behind Director Who, no one noticed him. He kept his hands straight and stood motionless as if standing in a military posture. Yes, there is a global competition that will be held soon. It was also the call he made to Luzaoki before, telling him the meeting place again. The last one is a bit of a coincidence. Started to imitate each other. With that said, he took the lead into the training ground. As for the access to the training ground, it goes without saying. It was simply used for training, and there were many fitness equipment familiar or unfamiliar to Luzaoki. The first was the handsome young man standing at the front to greet him. Because he exuded Luzaoki's slightly familiar aura. At first glance, you can tell that he is a muscular tyrant from the fighting series. The classmate who was knocked on the buttocks by Luzaoki in the first class of school, who was pretty and very polite. Another thin man stood farthest away. His face was stiff and he seemed to have no expression. He was trying his best to hide his presence even in public. Luzaoki couldn't figure out his intention when he said this, so she could only nodded slightly at him. But the more he acted like this, the more he attracted Luzaoki's attention. Director Who saw that all 5 team members had arrived, and he smiled and said, "Okay, since everyone is here, let's go in first." Behind him is a woman holding a book and exuding the aura of a domineering scholar. She wears a gray-black frame and looks a bit dull, but when you notice her smart eyes, you know that she is not as simple as she seems. Unfortunately, with Luzaoki's current attributes, most of these equipment have completely lost their training effect on him. He's just a middle-aged man who's a bit bald and slightly greasy. He has nothing to say. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 192. Director Who explained the importance of this competition very seriously. It is nothing more than to demonstrate the national strength and the spirit of the Dragon Kingdom, similar to the nature of the World Cup and Olympic Games. Luzaoki had a serious face and listened very carefully. It goes in through the left ear and out through the right ear, without even thinking about it. Just kidding, I'm just here to earn credits, it doesn't matter, what does it have to do with me? Now, please introduce yourselves and briefly demonstrate your abilities so that everyone can get to know each other. After Director Who spoke for a long time, he cleared his throat and finally got to today's topic. His eyes looked around among the 5 people and quickly locked on the target. John Yang, let's start with you. Go on stage and demonstrate. Director Who motioned to the handsome and strong young man from before to go to the martial arts arena and show off his skills to everyone. John Yang nodded, jumped onto the martial arts arena with a slight jump, and turned around with a toothy smile. Boy, I am John Yang from the 4th grade fighting class. Nice to meet you all. He was talking about everyone, but his eyes secretly glanced at Luzaoki, who was still there. As elders in the college, they actually knew each other. The only unfamiliar face was Luzaoki. The director said that everyone should introduce themselves, but in fact he was introducing himself to Luzaoki. I'm good at grappling and blocking. My talent is to strengthen my defensive abilities. I can serve as a front-line player in the team. As he spoke, he demonstrated his abilities. He was seen dancing his hands vigorously, making various grabbing and parrying movements. There was a faint light flickering between his hands, as if he had activated some skill. Only then did Luzaoki notice that his palms seemed to be larger than ordinary people. He has the arms of an ape and the waist of a wolf, tall and very heroic. Zhang Yang made a few postures smoothly, turned around and exhaled, slowly closed his hands, clasped his fists towards everyone, and walked off the stage leisurely. Okay, Luzaoki immediately took the lead in applauding. The remaining three people were stunned for a moment and clapped sparsely. Zhang Yang. Should I say thank you for the support? Director, who had a black line on his head and coughed, no need to applaud. Next, Lu Yang comes up. Lu Yang is that handsome short boy. He nodded and walked up the steps to the martial arts arena. I'm Lu Yang from the 4th grade alchemy class. I'm good at making gadgets. My talent is called instant training. As he spoke, he clapped his hands on the ground, and a mysterious magic circle appeared on the ground. Countless light points in the air gathered together, and then a small pistol slowly appeared in the center of the magic circle. It's like being 3D printed. Damn it! This one. Luzaoki called Naipai directly. How is this alchemy? This is clearly void creation. Bang, he fired a shot at the ground. With Luzaoki's eyesight, he could clearly see that a bullet with a flashing arc ejected from the muzzle and hit the floor hard. As he spoke, he slowly walked towards the steps. Lin Qingqing was supposed to be promoted to the 4th grade, but she beat the invigilator during the assessment. Zhang Yang stood next to Luzaoki and coughed, gently reminding him, so he repeated the grade to the 3rd grade. Grade. She said that the reason for the attack was because the teacher teased her. Zhang Yang's voice was like a gnat, as if he was afraid that Lin Qingqing would hear it, but as far as I know, the teacher was just curious when he saw her wearing a pair of glasses. I glanced at her a few times. As she spoke, she glanced at Luzaoki, with a hint of provocation in her eyes. If you stare at me again, I will charge you. As he spoke, he glanced at the 4 people and snorted, the reason why director who asked me to participate in the competition is because even in the 4th grade magic class. Then the pistol turned into a point of light and disappeared. I don't know what happened, but he stepped on his shoelace inexplicably, and then with an oops sound, he tripped his left foot and his right foot, and fell flat on the ground in full view of everyone. How fat is this naturally stupid attribute? It's just that you just perform. Why are you staring at me from time to time? Normal skills are not so flashy. The stone cone hits the ground and turns into gravel. The gravel turns into a ball of clear water, seeps into the ground and disappears. She closed the book gently, her face full of pride. My name is Lin Qingqing, and I am in the 3rd year magic class. The ancients never deceived me. Then she turned her outstretched hand into a fist, and all the ice cubes gathered in the middle, fused with each other, and transformed into a cold light ice gun. She waved her hand casually, and rows of basketball-sized fireballs appeared out of thin air and began to rotate in the air. After the demonstration, Lu Yang smiled shyly, I hope it can help everyone in the future. Luzaoki. The skill that came on stage should be the magical skill that the master must have when traveling at home and killing people, teleportation. Sure enough, alchemy is either a matter of gold or fate. Luzaoki suddenly understood and nodded to him sympathetically. Luzaoki glanced at the other people and found that except for him, everyone looked normal, as if they were accustomed to Lu Yang's behavior. She pointed at the center of the martial arts field, and the ice gun shattered with a pop sound, but it instantly turned into a bolt of lightning and hit the ground. This set of gorgeous movements was so smooth that if director who hadn't just said no applause, Luzaoki would probably have clapped again. Before the lightning hit the ground, It turned into a stone cone and hit the ground hard with a dong sound. By the time he walked down the martial arts arena cautiously, the girl holding the book had already grown impatient, and without Director Who's greeting, she appeared on the martial arts arena with just a swish. Luzaoki. In addition, she skillfully transforms the power of several major elements into each other. If it is not the effect brought by some combination of skills, it must be linked to her talent. Liu Yang got up in embarrassment and saw Luzaoki staring at him with a strange face. He couldn't help but touch his head in embarrassment and whispered, My talent has some side effects. Lin Qingqing snapped her fingers, click, click sounded, and the fireball was instantly frozen into ice. Although I know I'm handsome, you don't have to look at me so blatantly, right? After leaving a black mark on it, it was bounced into the air by the solid floor, and finally turned into an afterimage and disappeared. Every time you use it, your luck will get worse. There can't be anyone stronger than me. To be honest, if she hadn't actually felt the energy fluctuations caused by the changes in the spell, Luzaoki would have thought she was doing magic. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy has bad luck. Chapter 193. Luzaoki finally understood why she had just provoked him inexplicably and kept staring at him. Because he had taken a curious look at Lin Qingqing's glasses before. Wouldn't she also look for an opportunity to severely teach herself a lesson? What kind of monsters are in this third-grade magic class? If Luzaoki remembered correctly, Chu Yuxun, who had been entangled with him, seemed to be in the third-year magic class. Have to. Another ruthless person. RBQ, RBQ. Please stay away from me. When Lin Qingqing teleported to the audience, Director Who nodded and turned to the last thin young man. His eyes just stopped on this person, and he suddenly fell into a trance. Then he turned back to look at Luzaoki and said kindly, Student Lu, it's your turn to introduce him next. Luzaoki was a little confused by Director Who's behavior just now, but he didn't say much. He walked slowly onto the martial arts arena, put his hands on his hips, smiled brightly at the 5 people below, and then said, Hello, seniors of Imperial College. I am Luzaoki, a personal trainee who has been practicing for 2.5 years. I like to sing, sorry, I'm on stage. Luzaoki cleared her throat, I am Luzaoki, a first-year freshman. I am good at. He thought about it for a long time, and said a little troubledly, it seems that except for what I don't know, I'm pretty good at everything else. After speaking, Luzaoki nodded affirmatively. Okay, I'm done. 5 people in the audience. You put it here and put it here. It's really like listening to your words. Director Who was also a little speechless about this naughty student. But he knew that this new student not only had 2 brushes, but the most important thing was that there was someone above him. The relationship between him and Wang Yanran is unclear, and there is no conclusion yet. Don't look at the previous secret skills assessment, Dean Wang beat people very hard. But you should understand it when you see that Luzaoki is still alive and kicking in the academy. As a strong Sun Yao expert who specializes in secret arts, as long as she doesn't want people to cause problems, no matter how hard she hits them, what will happen? Tisk tisk. What does beating, kissing, scolding or loving mean? What does it mean to deceive others? Humph, I, old Who, am not stupid. Thinking of this, he coughed quickly and came out to smooth things over, classmate Lu is still as humorous as ever. Actually, your strength is obvious to all, referring to the secret test, and we are all convinced of your ability, so. No. I don't accept it. At this time, the thin man suddenly interrupted Director Who. Director Who was stunned for a moment. He seemed to have just remembered something when he saw this person, and frowned. You, Ben, what do you want to do? Laban glanced at director Hu indifferently, then stared at Luzaoki on the stage with a burning gaze, and said in a deep voice, I don't want to do anything. I just have doubts about classmate Luzaoki's strength and want to have a fair, just an open duel with him. As he said that, he jumped up and landed on the martial arts field, staring closely at Luzaoki. Oh, Luzaoki tilted her head, looked at him with interest, and silently gave him a thumbs up in her heart. Seonian, you are very courageous. Nonsense, director Hu frowned and shouted, what kind of duel is this? As teammates, you should help each other and work together. How come you are fighting among each other? Director Hu did not doubt Luzaoki's strength. After all, he has a record of beating away the fighting teacher with his bare hands. It can be seen that in addition to his superb secret skills, Luzaoki is also extraordinary in physical skills. But this is under the premise that people have not used their talents and skills. Wang Meng is embarrassed to say that he used his talent. If we really fight, how many battles could he have experienced as a first-year student? How could he be the opponent of the top student in the fourth-year ranger class who had experienced many battles? Laban ignored him and just said to Luzaoki coldly, I just came back from the academy and heard rumors that the guys from the Academy of Secret Arts have been disgraced. Director Hu took 2 steps forward and was about to go to the stage to break up the fight, but Luzaoki smiled at him and waved her hand. Eliminate presence. Student Lu's expression clearly shows that he is confident. If you had just shown your strength when you introduced yourself, I wouldn't have said anything more. He stopped abruptly. Okay, BA. If you win, I will recognize you. If you lose, you'd better go back to school. Luzaoki nodded, well, very good, I can't wait. Or should I punch him first and then ask all the questions while punching him? The Global Adventurer competition is not something people like you can participate in. Laban glanced at Luzaoki, who looked unconcerned. He was silent for a moment and said, since you are a freshman, I won't take advantage of you. Before I fight, I will introduce myself. Getting along with others depends on your strength. Luzaoki was amazed. Thinking of Director Hu's strange behavior before, she suddenly realized. I'm not fighting for them, but I don't recognize you as my teammate until I see your strength. That's why Director Hu was stunned for a moment, then turned around and asked Luzaoki to come on stage to introduce herself. So he stopped and became silent. Sure enough, being a funny guy has no future. I see. So he turned to Laban and sighed, well, if you want to give it a try, I might as well play with you. My innate ability can temporarily eliminate my sense of existence and make others ignore me. Then let's all start this duel immediately. Do I need to ask him what he misunderstood and explain? So I used my talent to eliminate my presence from Director Hu. Could it be that he also wants to have a fight with Laban? As for my skills, you'll find out soon. Luzaoki took a panoramic view of the situation in the audience and sighed. Luzaoki. Needless to say, the other 3 students, except for the handsome Lu Yang, who looked slightly worried, the other 2 had their hands folded across their chests, looking like they were watching a good show. But at this point, he snorted, took out the weapon from the parcel column, and said indifferently, come and have a fight with me. As a qualified coder, his strength has always been to observe people's actions. Wait, did he misunderstand something? Originally, Director Hu should have asked him to introduce himself first, but he wanted to take the opportunity to see what he was capable of and challenge himself on stage if he was not satisfied. Anyway, with my PQAHWE strength, even if something happens during the duel, I can still stop it. The Secret Arts graduation examination was actually passed by a first-year student with a score close to full marks. Global copy, My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 194. When Li Laban saw Luzaoki taking out his dagger, he didn't say much, and just said lightly, "Be careful." The whole person turned into an afterimage and rushed towards Luzaoki. Being experienced, he naturally knew not to give Luzaoki a chance to use his secret technique, so he planned to get up close and kill him instantly with a combo. But he didn't expect that Luzaoki was much faster than him. As soon as he leaned over and sprinted in front of Luzaoki, raising the water-splitting weapon in his hand to prepare for an attack, Luzaoki's scabbard was pressed against his neck. Li Laban was stunned for a moment. He looked up and saw Luzaoki's handsome face with a smile. Unexpectedly, the first move was directly caught by someone. Li Laban said, "I am so cracked." He really burst into pieces. His expression froze, and with a peng sound, his whole person turned into a puff of smoke, as if he had used some kind of escape skill. Luzaoki waved his hand casually, and the majestic magic power blew away the smoke, and Li Laban had disappeared. Luzaoki frowned and looked around. He seemed to be the only one left on the field. But he did not relax his vigilance at all, knowing that Li Laban must have used his ability to become invisible. However, it was not an option to waste it like this. He had an idea and pretended to start chanting, as if he was going to stack buffs. What are the adventurers of the Battle of the Secret Academy most afraid of? There is nothing better than allowing others to have enough time to add buffs to themselves and use spells. Naturally, Li Laban couldn't just let Luzaoki go to improve his status. Sure enough, a sharp water-splitting thorn poked out of the air from the side and stabbed straight at Luzaoki. Luzaoki was already prepared, and he blocked the attack with one backhand. Forced vibration knife triggers. Li Laban was directly attracted to him, and the water-splitting thorn was firmly stuck in his scabbard. Just as he was about to freeze, Luzaoki, with a smirk on his face, raised his fist and punched him with two panda eyes. As a result, there was another peng sound, and his body exploded into smoke and disappeared again. Is this a substitute technique? Wrong. Luzaoki shook his head. It should be a combination of avatar and stealth skills. Coupled with his talent, it's really a bit unsolvable. But Luzaoki didn't show any serious intentions. After all, whether sneaking or becoming invisible, he never left this area. If Luzaoki is more serious, who can compete with him when 10,000 swords return to the clan comes out? Although your talents and skills are exploding, what if, if, I pull out a sea of swords with my backhand, how should you respond? It's just that in a competition between students, there is no need to use nuclear weapons. When the time comes to destroy the venue, a certain dean named Wang will have to make him pay for it. After all, Zuyu was already there, he was clearly the one who got beaten last time, and he paid for the final repairs to the venue. If the martial arts arena was damaged this time, Luzaoki would definitely have to spend money to eliminate the disaster. This is also the reason why he didn't show his strength before. After all, he just made a move casually, and these stone slabs with the magic circle engraved on them will definitely not be retained. Although Luzaoki had many thoughts, only a few breaths passed. Facing the current situation, he tilted his head and thought for a moment, then slowly took out his big guy. "Look at the hidden weapon," Luzaoki shouted and jumped up high, her body spinning at high speed like a top. What he just took out from the parcel column: siege repeater, catapult, explosive barrel, gas bomb, meteor hammer, mace. A series of hidden weapons flew out like money raining down from the sky, almost covering the entire martial arts arena. You must know that Luzaoki's package is originally a stack of 999 plus props, and combined with his passive ability everything is allowed. Not to mention how beautiful the effect is. He was hit. Director Who? Not to mention the anger, he had been in so many fights, and he had always been the one to blame others. Today, it was the first time that someone else had screwed him. Are you telling me that this is a student who practices secret arts? Throw the water-splitting thorn towards Luzaoki. But after just a moment of blocking, Laban's expression changed. Spell. It's a spell. So he shouted, take it. I have to say, it really crushed him in every aspect. It wasn't over yet, he shouted loudly, his dark face full of desperate determination. If the delay continues, he may not even be able to drive out of the car before being consumed to death by Luzaoki. The water-splitting thorn that should have been knocked down by countless hidden weapons on the way was like a phantom, passing through Luzaoki's street storm without any hindrance and running straight towards him. This is not a description of his expression, but a physical change in color. You just throw a catapult that big? Huh, Luzaoki made a surprised sound. Liu Yang thought for a while and answered honestly, there should be no one except me. Wow. This sinister Luzaoki? What do you call this, a hidden weapon? This is clearly a clear weapon. The sponsor's father is actually right next to me. But he was helpless because it was a conspiracy. Zhang Yang poked Liu Yang, who was silent, and asked in a low voice, hey. Yang, do you students at the Alchemy Academy have as much luxury as him? Just like opening a dyeing workshop, it turns green and purple for a while, until finally it turns black. As a result, the next moment, the space above the flying water-splitting thorn suddenly distorted, and Laban suddenly appeared out of thin air and held the water-splitting thorn. Well, good fellow. Soon, the props thrown by Luzaoki flooded the entire venue. At this point, Laban could no longer hide his figure and was forced to reveal himself to resist the hidden weapons thrown by Luzaoki. It's interesting Luzaoki stopped moving and chose to avoid. Admiration is for Luzaoki's demonstrated strength. This scene immediately stunned the four people in the audience. Laban was both admired and angry. Zhang Yang's eyes suddenly changed a lot when he looked at him. Zhang, Lu, Lin. Even the king of the dark streets from old Beijing had to give a thumbs up and say, ouch. Street storm. This is called a true. Laban knew that he could not continue like this. He actually put a spell on the hidden weapon. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 195. After hearing a few bang 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 sounds, a bunch of Laban appeared out of thin air and directly smashed on Luzaoki, leaving him stunned. How? You can also fly Thunder God and multiple shadow clones. Several clones started to move together, grabbing the hands, tying the legs, strangling the neck, and locked Luzaoki firmly in an instant. And Laban himself took the water-splitting thorn and stabbed it down at Luzaoki quickly. Stop, seeing that the outcome seemed to be decided, Director Hu quickly shouted and prepared to take action. When Laban heard the cry, he hesitated and the movements of his hands slowed down a bit. Luzaoki sighed, knowing that this game had to be terminated. Then his tiger body shook slightly, and his magic power exploded. The clones that trapped Luzaoki all turned into smoke and dust and dissipated with a bang 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 sound. At the same time, he slowly raised his hand. With a dang sound, and in the stunned eyes of everyone, Luzaoki used only one hand to hold Laban's water-splitting thorn firmly in place. The sharp blade had no effect on his hands. Luzaoki didn't wait for Laban to recover, and used the golden snake silk hand move. His entire arm seemed to have no bones and instantly wrapped around Laban's weapon to grab his wrist. And he said to him with a smile, I caught you. At the same time, Luzaoki's other hand had already raised the dagger and placed it on Laban's neck. In fact, he had already thought about this plan to greet Rembel's Pirates of the Caribbean. If Director Hu didn't shout stop, Laban didn't hesitate either. Then, what will greet him will be Luzaoki's 3 fatal Hulk attacks, Arashi Yama Laban exclusive limited edition. Of course, it can be seen from his subconscious withdrawal that although he is not very convinced of himself, he does not have any ill intentions. So Luzioki cancelled the combo and let him go. Laban's eyes were dull, looking at his arms that were tightly locked by steel bars, and said in a dry voice, "I will admit defeat." After saying this, his already dark complexion became even darker. Director, who had already arrived in front of the two of them and coughed, "Student Lu, since classmate Lee has admitted defeat, why not let this duel end here?" Luzioki nodded with a smile, let go of Laban's hand, took out a bottle of medicine from the package and threw it to Laban. "Go on." Laban subconsciously took the medicine bottle and saw that it was a rare level purification medicine. Can remove negative effects from the body. Although it is not a treasure, a bottle of this level of potion on the market is still worth tens of thousands of dollars. He actually left it to himself like this? Laban glanced at Luzioki, and his expression softened a lot. She nodded gratefully at him, opened the potion, and drank it in one gulp. The blackness on his face dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the power that had been suppressed by the debuff returned to his body again. Laban shook hands, took a long breath, and his expression became relaxed. The feeling of losing power is not very pleasant. This is the disadvantage of fighting against the adventurers of the Secret Academy. You have to be extremely careful with everything. If you accidentally get tricked, you will basically lose the possibility of making a comeback. That spell is no joke. Lin Qingqing, who was wearing glasses next to her, curled her lips in disdain, but did not speak. Laban raised his head and continued, "I must admit that although Mr. Lu is a freshman, his strength is indeed strong, far beyond the students in the secret arts class I know, and he has won my approval for this." Director who? The one that is a little bit more direct is the full body hegemony, immune control, and immunity to various abnormalities. He didn't get angry, he just said calmly, "You still owe everyone a complete self-introduction." As expected of me. Akimbo.jpg. He walked to Lu Yang, leaned against him with his hand, and said proudly, "How is it? Are you awesome, brother Chi?" Which one does not start with a 50% reduction in abnormal effects? Seeing that he seemed to still have something to say, Director who quickly interrupted, "That's enough. I asked you to introduce yourself. Come back to the main story and don't go off topic." At this time, Luzioki had taken back all the props scattered on the field and jumped off the martial arts field neatly. Director who looked at the two of them and made sure that neither of them had suffered any damage. Then he turned back to Luzioki and Yanyus and said, "Classmate Lu, you go down first. As for Laban, this is far scarier than monsters." Director who felt a little headache when he saw that he was still talking a lot, so he quickly said, okay, I believe we have a good understanding of student Lee's strength, please go down now." In fact, the negative effects of Luzioki's all things are allowed are not as terrible as the spells cast by adventurers who specialize in secret arts. The feeling of being under a spell is like Superman swallowing a piece of kryptonite, a Saiyan having his tail pinched, or a Kamen Rider having his transformer knocked off. I believe that the game just now is enough for everyone to realize my strength. So, on behalf of myself, I welcome Mr. Lu to become my teammate. Sorry, they never had the chance to experience the negative effects. It was also the first time for Luzioki herself to witness the power of her all things are allowed when it was used on people. Because the resistance to negative status, monsters are indeed far stronger than adventurers. Lu Yang nodded and said seriously, "Awesome." Luzioki's strength crushed Laban, causing the basic value of the debuff to be very terrifying, and the negative status caused to Laban was no less than the spells cast by adventurers from other secret arts schools. Luzioki. As for Luzioki's enemies, I won't talk about ordinary monsters, but anything with some cards, such as elite monsters, and boss monsters. The other three. That's why after Lilaban realized that he had been hit by a spell, he decisively gave it a go and used his last big move against Luzaoki. Basically it means completely GG. As he said this, he bowed to Luzaoki. Luzaoki was so frightened that she quickly jumped away and waved her hands. No, no. If you can't speak, just speak less. But his hard power is strong. Lilaban put away the water thorn in his hand, cupped his hands to everyone, and said with a serious face, "First of all, I want to apologize to classmate Lu for my words and deeds." Lilaban nodded and continued, "I am Lilaban from the 4th year Ranger class of Taijing University. I am good at sneaking and assassination. I also know a little bit about exploration and setting traps. I am also familiar with wild survival and first aid measures. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 196. The training content is divided into 3 steps. The first step is to practice sparring among the team members to increase mutual understanding among the Royal Capital participating team members. In this process, everyone participating in the competition will play against the remaining 4 people, and this cycle will happen every day. In this process, not only must they understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, but they must also make up for their own shortcomings. This time lasts for 3 days. Next is the second step, with Director Who leading everyone to download the dungeon together. During the process of downloading the dungeon, Director Who will not take action during the whole process, and several participating team members will cooperate with each other to clear the dungeon. The types of dungeons are relatively complicated, because the purpose of downloading a dungeon is not only to improve each other's abilities and increase the tacit understanding between the players, but also to simulate the venue of the game. As a global adventurer competition, the venue for the competition is a barrier space jointly created by many Sunyao warriors. The scenes inside are unpredictable and full of diversity. Team members must learn to overcome various strange environments and ensure that they can exert corresponding combat power in any venue, otherwise it becomes a pure luck game. If you are unlucky and encounter an extreme playing field, you may not even see the enemy and you will GG. This process lasts the longest, because the time for running into each other is uncertain. It may be that everyone can achieve a very good level after several copies, or it may be that after 10 days and a half, the satisfactory results are still not achieved. The last step is even simpler. Simulated battle. Director Who will take everyone to watch the competitions of participating teams in previous years, and invite some adventurers who have participated in the competition to have a real battle. There is an old saying in the Dragon Kingdom, which is that if you know yourself and your enemy, you will never be in danger in 100 battles. Under Director Who's explanation, they must understand the mainstream methods of participating teams in various regions and become familiar with various tactics, traps, and mechanisms. Then through battles, you can integrate the knowledge you have absorbed. Director Who explained the training process one by one. Seeing that no one objected, he couldn't help but clapped his hands and said, "Okay, since everyone has no problem, let's start the first stage of training." As he spoke, he took out a small box and said, "Everyone draws a lot, and the number on the lot determines the order of sparring. Let's talk about the rules first. Sparring is sparring, but you are not allowed to hit each other hard. Violators will be severely punished." As he said this, he glanced at the girl holding a book. The girl looked at him calmly and fearlessly. Director Who shook his head slightly, feeling a little helpless, and said, "Let's start the drawing in the order in which we introduced ourselves before." The 5 lots were drawn quickly. Luzaoki holds the number 3 lottery, and the other 4 are. Zhang Yang has the 5th pick, Lu Yang has the 1st pick, Lin Qingqing has the 2nd pick, and Li Laban has the fourth pick. The order of sparring was also determined. First, Lu Yang, who won the first lottery, will play against the second, third, fourth, and fifth lottery in order. Then Lin Qingqing, the second pick, will play against the third, fourth, and fifth picks. Then Lu Zioqi with the third pick will play against the fourth and fifth picks. Finally, there is a battle between number 4 and number 5. Each team member has 4 sparring sessions, facing different teammates. Lu Yang, who was the first to take the stage, seemed a little uneasy. He walked slowly onto the stage and looked at director Hu eagerly. Fuck. Gundam. The fireball hit the mechanical arm and made a fart sound before turning into a plume of smoke. Lu Yang took a breath and said, "Please enlighten me." As soon as he said this, his eyes suddenly became sharp. She took a slight step back and appeared in mid-air out of thin air, avoiding Lu Yang's slightly cumbersome slash. Lu Zioqi uttered a curse word that attracted the attention of the two people watching the battle. At the same time, the sky suddenly became covered with dark clouds, and it seemed like it was going to rain soon. Lu Zioqi, want it too. Then the robotic arm began to rise layer by layer. In Lu Zioqi's stunned expression, a robot about 10 meters high rose up from the magic circle released by Lu Yang. Other people's kids can drive Gundam. I must enter the Alchemy Academy. Lin Qingqing seemed to know how difficult he was. The moment the magic circle lit up, she immediately pointed the staff at the opponent, chanting the mysterious inscription in her mouth, and accelerated the spell casting in this way. Zhang Yang and the others naturally didn't know what a Gundam was, but when they saw Lu Zioqi's envious expression, they also showed empathetic expressions. It's a pity that what she is holding is not the Tianya divine sword, and she is not the girl in white clothes. Lin Qingqing is a woman with teleportation, so naturally she won't let him get close so easily. Let's begin, director Hu tapped his feet lightly and came to the stage. This movement technique was somewhat similar to the Qinggong in the martial arts TV series that Lu Zioqi had seen in his previous life, which made him look at it a few more times. No matter what the people in the audience think. Boom, the battleship knife hit the enchanted stone bricks of the martial arts arena with a deafening sound. The battle on the martial arts stage gradually became heated. Lin Qingqing was much more decisive and agile than him. She put away her books, teleported to the stage, let out a hum from her nostrils, and stretched out her hand carelessly. Please enlighten me. Lu Zioqi raised her head and saw this scene, and suddenly thought of a sentence: the mysterious evil of the 9 heavens turns into divine thunder, the brilliant power of heaven is used to attract it with the sword. Lu Zioqi only had one thought at the moment. The fireball did not land on Lu Yang's magic circle. This principle is universal throughout the universe. Even if they don't know what a Gundam is, they can't help but yearn for it when they see this mecha with such a cool appearance. After saying this, she already had a staff in her hand, and her momentum rose. She floated in mid-air without making too many movements, but she made the dark clouds in the sky rotate, causing lightning and thunder in an instant. He didn't take out any equipment, just took a step forward, and a huge magic circle appeared on the ground. Then he shook his head again. The white and blue robot summoned by Lu Yang in front of him looked like the Gundam that Lu Zioqi had been obsessed with for a while in his previous life. Soon a huge fireball hit Lu Yang hardly. Lin Qingqing took advantage of this gap to raise her staff high, and the gorgeous staff emitted a dazzling light. Lu Yang entered the cockpit of the Gundam, holding a weapon similar to a ship-cutting knife. The engine at the back spurted out scorching white flames, pushing the entire mecha to rush toward Lin Qingqing quickly. Because a second before it was about to arrive, a pair of big mechanical hands stretched out from behind Lu Yang, firmly protecting him between his arms. If you are a man, you should drive a Gundam. Global copy. My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 197. Lin Qingqing's skills are indeed cool, and their power seems to be quite impressive. It's just that the prelude to casting this spell is indeed a bit long. Liu Yang was not a fool. How could he watch her trigger wind and thunder and order lightning? He controlled the Gundam to raise the ship-killing sword in his hand, and instantly transformed it into a sniper rifle. At the same time, a row of launchers with honeycomb eyes popped out of the Gundam's shoulders, and it quickly locked on the target. Whoosh whoosh, a series of small missiles ejected from the launcher, drawing zigzag routes in the air and rushing towards Lin Qingqing. If nothing else happens, beautiful fireworks will bloom on her body. Lin Qingqing was not a fool. Since she dared to show off in front of Liu Yang, she naturally prepared a way to deal with this situation. She raised her head slightly, and Liu Zhaoqi seemed to be able to see a bright light reflected from the glasses she was wearing. There was an arc flashing in the air. Wherever they passed, the missiles were detonated in advance, blooming with brilliant colors in the sky. But Liu Yang was already ready at this time. The sniper rifle mounted on the Gundam flashed with a dazzling light after it was fully charged, aiming at the petite person in the air. He slowly pulled the trigger. A bright blue light beam instantly cut through the sky and headed straight for Lin Qingqing. As for Lin Qingqing, the skills she has been guiding for a long time are finally completed. The staff in her hand drew a circle in the air, and finally used the tip of the staff to gently tap the Gundam driven by Liu Yang. The originally dark clouded sky suddenly lit up. Countless lightnings converged into a thunder pillar like thunder and faced the blue light pillar unstoppably. In an instant, the sky and the earth turned pale, and everything was silent. The two huge energies began to entangle, collide, and offset each other. How cool, Liu Zhaoqi sighed. He is as strong as he is strong, but his moves are never so gorgeous. The only one worthy of praise 10,000 swords returns to the sect is also a bit monotonous. Besides the colorful sword energy, there is nothing, so angry. Hey! Junior brother Liu, who do you think will have the upper hand in this move between the two of them? Zhang Yang came over and asked Liu Zhaoqi secretly. Liu Zhaoqi glanced at him. I saw a smile on his face, and his expression was a little unclear under the flickering light. Liu Zhaoqi didn't bother to ponder his intentions and said casually, that must be Lin Qingqing. Zhang Yang became interested when he heard this. Oh? Why is junior brother Liu so sure that Lin Qingqing can gain the advantage? What do you think? Liu Zhaoqi smiled and said nothing, just turned around and ignored him, silently watching the battle on the martial arts field. Do not ask. Asking is to lose to the left side of the wave since ancient times. Li Laban, who had been silent for a long time, also spoke. Yes, Lin Qingqing is indeed slightly better. If I'm not mistaken, she actually started preparing for this skill when she entered the venue, and it's only now that she's released it. The power is evident. And the current situation is clearly the result of her preparation and deliberate guidance. With that said, Li Laban began to point out the situation eloquently. From the beginning of the duel between the two, we analyzed the intentions and thoughts of each other's moves. Director, who silently listened to his behavior like a commentator, couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth, and thought to himself. Damn it! Now that you have finished speaking, what else can I say? This year's contestants are indeed the most difficult to lead. Before Li Laban could finish speaking, Lin Qingqing and Liu Yang's exchange of ultimate moves ended. Sure enough, Lin Qingqing had the right time and right place and suppressed Liu Yang's laser cannon as expected. At the back, Lin Qingqing's thunder pillar had already approached Gundam's side, and the situation was already precarious. And the most critical moment happened when the chain dropped. The barrel of the sniper rifle in Liu Yang's Gundam was red and hot, and suddenly a puff of black smoke came out, and it immediately went out. This accident caught everyone present off guard. Even Lin Qingqing didn't have time to stop, and the entire Gundam was shrouded in thunder pillars. Liu Zhaoqi was dazzled by the various robots. Greater energy fluctuations brewed in her body. He raised his hand and slowly snapped his fingers. However, several pale golden vortexes suddenly appeared around me, somewhat similar to the portal in the copy. The scene unfolded in front of everyone. As expected. There are flying robots with propellers, crawler robots with heads like machine guns, humanoid robots with blades and axes, and various weird robots that look like square boxes with legs. He was just about to take action when he saw Director Who folding his arms and looking leisurely, as if he was not in any hurry. Fire in the hole. This guy Liu Yang must have some life-saving cards that he hasn't used yet. Only a charred mark was left on the spot. He raised his head, looked at Lin Qingqing seriously and said, "I'm going to be serious." Crack, the force field covering Liu Yang's body slowly shattered like a mirror. Lu Zioqi. Lu Zioqi heard the very neat footsteps and couldn't help but stare at the whirlpool carefully, and then he was stunned again. Countless firepower instantly formed a dense barrage, shooting toward Lin Qingqing overwhelmingly. Lin Qingqing's skill ended, the dark clouds dispersed, and the thunder pillar slowly disappeared. Boom! In the middle of the vortex, rows of robots walked neatly out of the vortex. When it reached a certain distance, the square box made a squatting posture and suddenly rushed towards Lin Qingqing. She was motionless, but a thick mana shield appeared on her body. After the thunder pillar disappeared, the Gundam behind Liu Yang slowly turned into light spots and floated away. Liu Yang himself, wearing a cover similar to an force field, stood beneath the Gundam unharmed. Countless flying robots flew towards Lin Qingqing. Lin Qingqing seemed to really know his strength, and she didn't refute. She just landed on the ground, holding the staff tightly, with her long hair flying. Fire! Liu Yang's attack is naturally not that simple. The Gundam driven by Liu Yang knelt on one knee, holding a huge shield in his hand, and was covered in smoke. All kinds of bullets hitting it can only make little ripples, which is not enough to cause any damage to her. These robots walked out of the vortex and quickly formed a square array. With Liu Yang's finger, they quickly pointed their guns at Lin Qingqing, who was still in the charging stage. At the same time, those square boxes with legs rushed forward. Lu Zioqi understood instantly. As for Liu Yang, he just clapped his hands. Lin Qingqing is not a vegetarian either. It seemed that he had resisted all the damage from the thunder pillar. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 198. Lu Zioqi took a look and said, I know this. EZ-8 Self-Destructor. Don't think I won't recognize you if you replace your wheels with legs. You just turn into ashes. I guess I really can't recognize it. Lu Zioqi's thoughts broke down from here, but Liu Yang's offensive was not over yet. The flying robot has arrived above Lin Qingqing's head, emitting rays to continuously attack her mana shield. This kind of ray seems to be extremely destructive to the shield. It only takes a moment to shoot small holes in the shield. You know, the explosion just now didn't even damage the fur of this mana shield. Even the light has not dimmed a bit. The tiny rays emitted by this flying robot may seem inconspicuous, but they can easily break the shield's protection. However, although the rays could penetrate the shield, the holes in the shield were constantly healing themselves, and the two were in a stalemate for a while. But without the strict protection of the mana shield, Lin Qingqing would be really in danger when she faced Liu Yang's hail of bullets. And Lin Qingqing also had a plan to deal with it. I saw her staff pause slightly, and the originally dilapidated mana shield actually condensed into substantial ice crystals. All the original loopholes have been filled. This ice crystal is so strong that the bullets fired by Liu Yang's robot only make a ding sound when hitting it, and there is no way to break through the defense. The flying robot seemed to have no way to deal with the ice crystals. Not only did the rays it emitted not have any effect, but they were bounced back by the ice crystal shield, almost injuring friendly forces. Seeing this situation, Liu Yang did not panic. With a wave of his hand, the robots holding weapons in the front row began to charge towards Lin Ching. At the same time, he pressed his hands on the ground, and a faint white light emitted from the robot army, as if receiving some mysterious blessing, and the firepower became more intense. The charging robot began to fuse and transform midway. More than 20 robots were connected to each other, and after a cool twist and deformation, they turned into a 5-meter-tall knight holding a spear and riding a motorcycle. It loaded up its spear and aimed it at Lin Ching. The motorcycle made a harsh buzzing, with 4 jet pipes behind it. At this moment, slight blue flames appeared, and the speed suddenly increased. The sound barrier was instantly broken with a loud bang. In the blink of an eye, the knight rushed to Lin King's side and stabbed the spherical ice crystal shield with his spear. Crack, using the Aaron car, the ice crystal shield couldn't withstand such a violent impact and cracked a big hole. The knight then swung his spear and hit the ice crystal with the barrel, instantly turning it into broken ice. But the person inside the shield has long since disappeared. Liu Yang was stunned for a moment and subconsciously raised his head to look up at the sky. As a result, I heard a playful voice coming from behind, "Wrong. Not good." Liu Yang's face changed color slightly, and the knight turned the car around and quickly returned to defense. But it seems it's too late. The next moment, a violent elemental explosion swept across the entire place, swallowing Liu Yang and all the robots around him. Ice, thunder, fire, wind, earth. The power of various elements are mixed together, but they are not harmonious with each other. They collide with each other and explode continuously, making the power of the skill increase exponentially. Lin Ching appeared in the distance, sweating on her forehead, panting slightly, holding her staff tightly in her hand. "Good guy." Buddha's wrathful lotus. Lu Xiaoqi clicked her tongue in surprise. The principle of this skill is exactly the same as that of a certain Yan emperor. Lu Xiaoqi had to sigh, there are indeed many talented people. The chaotic elemental power slowly subsided, revealing Liu Yanglei, who was enveloped in the explosion. Surprisingly, he was fine. All the robots gathered around him and merged into a huge defense device, forming an force field that was several times larger than before. He stood in the center with his eyes fixed on Lin Ching. The machines around him were rapidly deforming. Countless machine guns and laser cannons poked out from behind him, and they were about to continue attacking. "Wait. I give up." Seeing that the situation was not good, the girl immediately raised her hands and surrendered. After saying this, she curled her lips again and muttered, "This didn't even break his turtle shell, how annoying." Lu Xiaoqi's sharp ears couldn't help but twitch when he heard her words. When he looked at Liu Yang in the scene, he also had a look of admiration on his face. At this moment, perhaps because the duel was over, Liu Yang returned to his previous appearance, no longer as sharp as he was during the fight. Thanks to Li Laban's explanation, Lu Xiaoqi also learned a little more about the adventurers from the Alchemy Academy. Sure enough, it's really hard to beat without draining his package bar. "Not bad," director, who applauded approvingly, walked slowly onto the martial arts field, made a few comments on the performance of the two people, and then asked Liu Yang, "How is it? Do you want to take a rest?" Liu Yang thought for a while and said softly, "My strength basically comes from the props I control. My own consumption is not big, so I can go directly to the second game." Director, who nodded, "Okay then, let's start the next match between Liu Yang and Lu Xiaoqi." "This person underestimate me." Snort. Lu Xiaoqi's face immediately darkened. Indeed, under normal circumstances, one-on-one, it is very easy for the adventurers of the alchemy school to defeat the adventurers of the mystic school. Especially Liu Yang, a top student in the alchemy class. Not to mention anything else, the adventurers from the secret academy had no choice but to surrender after seeing the sea of robots. After all, everyone knows it. Most spells are ineffective on props made through alchemy. In a fight with him, most of the adventurers from the Secret Art Academy will be destroyed first. Without spells, no matter how good your healing ability is or how good your auxiliary ability is, in the end, they can only be drowned in the ocean of his mechanical army. Unfortunately, Luzaoki is no ordinary person. He is in the first grade class, not taking the usual path at all. Seeing Director Who greeting him to come on stage, Luzaoki smiled slightly, curled up the corners of her mouth with Nike, and lightly jumped onto the stage. Director Who left in a daze again, which also meant that the battle had officially begun. Liu Yang's eyes became sharp again. But Luzaoki was different. He didn't even take out his dagger. He just bowed deeply to Liu Yang and said loudly, "Please give me your advice." Liu Yang was stunned. Looking at Luzaoki, who seemed to be defenseless and bowed to him, he couldn't give the order to attack. Instead, he returned the salute a little embarrassed and bowed to Luzaoki. "No, classmate Liu is so polite. Good chance." Luzaoki narrowed his eyes, and his whole body turned into a strong wind. In an instant, he was behind the unsuspecting Liu Yang, stretched out his knife and struck lightly. The battle is over. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 199. Liu Yang only heard a swish sound and felt the violent wind coming from around him. He immediately realized that something was wrong. Unfortunately, it's too late. There was just a pop sound. Luzaoki had no moral ethics at all. She came to cheat and sneak attack him, a young man in his early 20s. As Luzaoki's knife fell, his eyes darkened, his body went limp and he fell down. This speed was so fast that even Director who had just stepped down, could not react. Luzaoki looked at Liu Yang, who had fallen to the ground unconscious, and shrugged. Snort. This is what happens when you look down on me. Director Who. Zhang, Lin, and Li. What a speed. Well, what a despicable means. It's not that you can't use this method of sneak attack while the two sides are saluting each other before the game, but you can use it in this situation. Isn't it? However, judging from the speed with which Luzaoki just took action, everyone had to admit that there were indeed two brushes. If he hadn't taken precautions in advance, no one present would have been able to escape his unexpected move. Including Director Who. Li Laban, who was born in the Ranger Academy, has a strange face. Among them, he is undoubtedly the one who is good at speed. But he dares to guarantee that even in the entire academy, there is basically no adventurer who can explode with Luzaoki's ghostly speed just now. It is not ruled out that there are hidden masters. He wasn't sure if Luzaoki secretly added some buff to himself, which caused him to explode at such a terrifying speed. Since Luzaoki's attack was not heavy, Liu Yang only briefly lost consciousness, but with his strength, he quickly recovered. He opened his eyes blankly and lay on the ground for a while without realizing what happened. I competing? Why did you just lie down? The cold floor of the martial arts arena reminded him of what had just happened. He suddenly turned over and climbed up. Looking at the smiling sunny boy in front of him, his cheeks turned red. For him, a top student in the Alchemy Academy, he was defeated without even using a single item. This is undoubtedly a shame. But with his character, he is not someone who can be shameless and refuse to admit defeat. In the end, I could only look at Luzaoki, lowered his head, and said in a loud voice, "I lost." Luzaoki nodded with a smile, cupped her hands towards him, and Shiren walked off the stage. The three teammates in the audience looked at him with strange expressions. To be honest, if everyone didn't know about his achievements in secret arts, Just what he did just now would have put him in the Ranger class. Regarding this game, even director who didn't know what to say for a while. Finally, he looked at Liu Yang, and after a while he just managed to say, "Remember from now on, never take any situation lightly when facing anyone." Liu Yang nodded seriously. For him, the competition just now must have been very impressive. Did nothing, failed without understanding anything. Even if you die, you can't rest in peace. And Li Laban in the audience was instantly overwhelmed. Because the next scene was a fight between him and Liu Yang. Facing the heavily armed Liu Yang, he also had a huge headache. After all, even Lin Qingqing, the leader of the magic class who is known as the most destructive, has nothing to do with him. What can he do as a bayonet-playing ranger? They can only try to take advantage of Liu Yang's carelessness by constantly wandering around to kill him with one blow and end the battle. And now Liu Yang. Li Laban didn't think he would be like a person who fell into the same pit twice. Sure enough, the game became intense as soon as it started. As soon as Li Laban came on stage, Liu Yang launched an attack without hesitation, without giving him a chance to speak. Countless robots came out. Because he knows that Li Laban is also a high-speed and high-explosive player. If he still fights with the same attitude as before, he is likely to seize the opportunity and take him away in one round. Li Laban is not stupid. Once his talent is activated, he instantly becomes invisible on the martial arts field. At this moment, his abilities are at full capacity, and he is nowhere to be seen either on or off the court. When Liu Yang faced this situation, he chose the same tactic as Liu Xiaoqi without hesitation: saturation attack. Countless robots began to scrub the martial arts field, hoping to force Li Laban out. Only Liu Xiaoqi glanced at a corner of the martial arts arena with a strange expression. From his perspective, a thin figure was stalking towards Liu Yang on the edge of the martial arts arena. It seemed that Li Laban's ability had no effect on him. He raised his eyebrows, feeling a little confused. Because he really didn't notice Li Laban when he was on the court. Why can I detect his movements when I'm in the audience? And judging from everyone's expressions, it was obvious that only Liu Xiaoqi could notice it. There is no difference in the eyes of others. Liu Xiaoqi remembered that he had eliminated his presence before introducing himself, and asked director Hu to skip him and let Liu Xiaoqi take the stage. He had a vague guess in his mind. Liu Yang on the stage was concentrating on the entire martial arts arena, but he couldn't help but raised his eyebrows and became confused. Even his actions in commanding the mechanical army began to slow down. What am I doing on stage? Who do you seem to be fighting against? Who are you following? The audience in the audience was also confused. What is this kid Liu Yang doing? Why do you fight and stop fighting? By the way, who is he calling? Liu Xiaoqi looked at their expressions and finally understood. I can't help but feel amazed at Li Laban's talent. Cowhide. Sure enough, cowhide. It's actually possible to do this to such an extent. He finally understood. Li Laban's talent was not released to himself, but to the people around you. It seems that due to his own uniqueness, the effect of Li Laban's talent on him has been slowed down to a certain extent. And when he is not the main target, this resistance is even more obvious. Liu Xiaoqi's face showed an expectant expression. Watching him sneak up on Liu Yang, I don't know if he can successfully attack. Zhang Yang noticed Liu Xiaoqi's expression and seemed to understand that Liu Xiaoqi knew something, and was about to open his mouth to ask. As a result, the scene changed inside. A handful of water-splitting thorns easily pierced the protective shield around Liu Yang and attacked him. Liu Xiaoqi also stood from another angle and watched the skills Li Laban had used on him before. Global copy: My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author: Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 200. Unfortunately, this sneak attack still failed to succeed. Although Liu Yang was in a daze, he was a little confused when he stood on the martial arts stage because his opponent's presence was eliminated. But he firmly remembered what director who just said. Even if he forgets his opponent, he is still not careless at all. I have already made preparations for you. At the same time as he was attacked, a new transparent shield rose from the ground, firmly blocking the water-splitting thorns from outside. Seeing that the situation was not good, Li Laban immediately retreated. But after just 2 steps back, he hit a solid wall. It turns out that this shield is not 1 layer, but 2 layers. At this moment, he was sandwiched between 2 protective shields and became a sandwich biscuit. The moment Liu Yang saw him, he suddenly understood and regained his impression of him. He waved his hand gently, and countless turrets rose from the ground, all aimed at Li Laban. Li Laban. If Lu Zhaoqi hadn't made the sneak attack before, 80% of his actions at the moment would have been successful. No matter what happens, you can retreat safely. But he didn't want Liu Yang to learn from the experience and have already thought of how to deal with being attacked again in such a short period of time. And he even implemented it on himself. What a bad luck! Now he only has 2 choices. The first is to raise your hands and surrender. After all, half the battle is lost if you surrender. Facing such a little monster from the Alchemy Academy, even if you lose, it is not a shame. The second natural thing is to give it a try. He still has a trick he hasn't used yet. If he can suddenly break through the protective layer inside, he still has a chance to make a comeback. He thought about it and decided to give up. After all, the author had already spent 3 chapters just describing the fight between Liu Yang and Lin Qingqing. If he had another 3 chapters with him, many handsome audience members would probably have objections, whisper BB. With Li Laban admitting defeat cleanly, the game came to the 4th game. Liu Yang vs Zhang Yang. But this time, Liu Yang's expression looked a little cautious, and he asked for a break before sparring. Looking at this posture, it seems that he has some understanding of Zhang Yang's strength and knows how powerful his ability is. He also believes that in his current state, he cannot compete with it and needs to adjust. Director Hu nodded and gave Liu Yang a quarter of an hour to rest. Lu Zhaoqi curled her lips in displeasure. I feel like I'm being treated differently. You don't need to take a break if you hit yourself, but you need to take a break if you hit Zhang Yang, right? You boy, the road is narrow. A quarter of an hour passed quickly. Liu Yang and Zhang Yang stood facing each other on the martial arts field. As Director Hu announced loudly, "Start," he drifted away. Liu Yang's already fierce expression became more serious. He clapped his hands on the ground, and the huge magic circle was revealed again. Relatively speaking, Zhang Yang's expression was much more relaxed, and he even had a sunny smile on his face. He slowly took off his coat, revealing his strong arms, folded his hands and said to Liu Yang, "Come here." The attitude is quite casual. Lu Zhaoqi's eyes widened, "Let me knock. This person is more arrogant than me. Who is the protagonist?" It seemed that the remaining 3 people knew his strength and didn't say much. The light on the magic circle drawn by Liu Yang kept flickering. Various robots appeared again on the martial arts field. The robots he summoned this time were completely different from the previous ones. They were all fighting robots wearing thick armor and holding melee weapons. Not a single one remotely. Lu Zhaoqi was stunned, her mind was filled with questions. Like an explosion of energy, Zhang Yang's black hair stood on end, and an invisible aura spread. During this period, the robots nearby did not try to attack Zhang Yang, but their attacks were like tickling Zhang Yang, with no reaction at all. Zhang Yang raised the 2 armored robots and made a simple and rough sweep. The armored robots surrounding him were instantly knocked away and the area was cleared. He tapped his feet lightly and dove into the pile of robots. What? Can I bring my own wife to learn alchemy now? Lu Zhaoqi was stunned when she saw the figure summoned by Liu Yang. Zhang Yang gives people the impression of being domineering in just 2 words. Seeing Zhang Yang approaching him with ease despite the siege of hundreds of armored robots, Liu Yang couldn't sit still. This is more than special, it's simply a cowhide plush. If Lu Zhaoqi hadn't used the eye of true consciousness, he wouldn't even want to believe that this was actually a cold machine. He could see that so far, Zhang Yang had not used any skills other than using his natural abilities. This ultimate artistic conception runs through his entire being, so that even the simplest and most unpretentious straight punch becomes infinitely powerful in his hands and difficult to resist. He is an adventurer from the Fighting Academy, and he must be very skilled in close combat. But Zhang Yang's feeling of punching his flesh can make his blood boil. Lu Zhaoqi watched intently. Looking at the rows of melee armored robots rushing towards him, Zhang Yang nodded with satisfaction and said with a smile, "Yes, this is the fun." He opened his hands, grabbed the two robots slowly, and began to exert force. After saying the sentence, there was a boom. Damn it! This young man. Although the previous showdown between Liu Yang and Lin Qingqing was brilliant, Li Leiban's ability was also very mysterious. Li Leiban saw his confusion and explained in a low voice, "Zhang Yang's talent is a bit special. She is actually an exquisite and beautiful girl." He once again summoned a petite figure and used the mysterious strengthening skills he had used before, fully enhancing the combat effectiveness of the robot army. Every simple attack can make a robot or several robots fall to the ground and turn into scrap metal. Just rely on a pair of fists to have the posture to sweep thousands of armies. Only then did Lu Zhaoqi understand. His fists are like the wind, his power is like thunder, his feet are like fighting poles, and his body is like Mount Tai. Isn't this just giving people an invincible patch? Lu Zhaoqi only saw that his whole body was exuding a faint silver glow, as if he had turned into a figure made of metal. The engine-driven machine couldn't compare to Zhang Yang's powerful force and made a creaking sound. Then the electric sparks flickered, a click sound was heard, and a stream of black smoke came out from the joints, and he lost the ability to resist. Not only is long range ineffective against him, it will even increase his combat effectiveness. It doesn't require too many cool abilities. Every move is quite direct, but it leaves Liu Yang's robot with no room for resistance. But the long-range attacks that were supposed to restrain him were ineffective against him, and the enemy was forced to fight him in close combat.